Hello everybody and welcome back, where today, I know I'm a little late to the party here, but I finally played Pirates VR Jolly Roger on PSVR2. This is the port of a game that came out a little while ago on other platforms, and honestly, it was not quite what I expected, but I still did have a good time with it, despite a couple of issues. This review is going to be split into two segments. One of them will be the PSVR2 port quality itself, and how it utilizes features, and if they've put in the work there, and the other half will be of the game itself and its systems, and how I found it overall. Before we get into this, only 25% you are subscribed, so please feel free to do so, and thank you to our patrons and members who are all on screen right now. First and foremost, the PSVR2 port. Visually, the game runs at 90 native unreprojected, which is fantastic. There's no ghosting or reprojection here in terms of the frame rate at least, and everything feels incredibly smooth all the way throughout the game. In close to middle distances, the game is quite sharp, but going a little bit further into the distance, we have what looks like some temporal anti-aliasing effects going on, with a bit of blurriness and shimmering, and it's kind of let down by that a little bit. What doesn't let it down though is its use of the OLED panels on PSVR2. There are several instances throughout the game where you're going through dark areas and lighting up areas with a lantern, and that HDR and contrast looks fantastic here. Once you get out of the bigger vistas of the start of the game and start getting into smaller areas, it genuinely does look really good, especially for an indie game. And considering this is the studio's second PSVR2 game, I am thoroughly impressed by what they managed to pull off here with such a small team and budget. There is a little bit of trailing in terms of the visuals, so for example, if I move my hand very quickly across the screen, you get that TAA blur, which doesn't look like reprojection but can have kind of a similar effect for some people, which may cause a bit of discomfort or just annoyance visually, but apart from that, I'm pretty happy with the presentation here, especially for the price and the size of the team. As for PSVR2 features, we've got full use here, which is great to see. Headset rumble, haptics in the controllers, adaptive triggers for firing off flintlocks, and other interactions, and they genuinely do add things to the game. It's not just like ticking off a checklist. The devs have clearly thought about where the haptics could be implemented. For example, they're put in sections that are actually useful to have it in, like when a rock fall happens or you brush your head against some leaves or some kelp underwater. You'll feel that in the head haptics, and that adds a level of immersion to the game. As for options on PSVR2, we have smooth and snap turning, teleport and smooth movement, and toggle grip is on by default, which is the way I like it. However, accessing the options menu was a little bit weird. You have to hold down the options button, but that also recenters you, so that can cause some discomfort. Overall though, the PSVR2 port quality is very good here. I'm happy with the work they've put in. They've used a lot of features, and while visually it could use a little bit of cleaning up in certain aspects and areas, in certain instances the game does look pretty great for an indie production. On the game side of things, I would say your playthrough will take anywhere between 1 hour and 30 minutes to 3 hours. I was in the middle of that, and for $20, it's up to you to decide whether or not that's worth it. But the gameplay you're actually facing here is a bit of light puzzling, nothing too hard at all. It's usually exploring an area to find a key or a piece of a mechanism to continue onward. Some very simple combat using weapons like the flintlock or items like a lamp to ward off skeletons, but the game does mix up the combat at the end for one final encounter, and also a fair bit of swimming and climbing. The climbing doesn't feel as good as, say, Horizon Call the Mountain, which is the flagship AAA experience on PSVR2, but this is a much smaller team, and despite a couple of grievances I had with it, like the movement feeling a bit bouncy, especially when you let go, and the time it takes you to pull yourself up being a bit too long, I still found that the climbing overall was quite functional and worked well. What I mean by the bouncing though is that sometimes I'd want to drop down to a ledge, but instead I would kind of jump off a little bit too fast, and instead of the game landing me where I wanted to land, it would kind of send me off the edge into the abyss and I would die. And when you die, it resets you back to your last save checkpoint, which can be a couple minutes ago, which can be a bit frustrating. The story is a classic pirate adventure trope. You're looking for some treasure, but surprisingly, the game doesn't really include a lot of the pirating cliches that I would expect, other than the one I just mentioned. There's no raiding ships or looting other pirate stashes and having to fight them off, or leading a crew, or really doing anything pirate ship related at all, and that was a bit confusing to me. I'm guessing on a smaller budget, it's a lot easier to do an adventure like this where you're exploring an island with pirate-themed items, enemies, weapons, and the story overall, rather than actually jumping in and making a fully fledged boat system and creating a game like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but in VR. That's kind of impossible for a team like this, but the game was different to how I expected a pirate adventure like this to be in VR, but that's not really a bad thing overall. It's just about really setting your expectations rightly for something like this. Don't expect a massive AAA adventure like AC Black Flag. This is very much you on an island trying to figure out puzzles, take on enemies and finding treasure, and that's about it. The game also includes original music, some of which is actually pretty damn good, especially at the start of the game, but I felt some of the combat and more spooky music to not really hit as hard as it should. However, I will say, again, in those opening segments, especially the opening area, which is quite big and looks really nice, I did enjoy the soundtrack there, I really did. Sound effects, though, are pretty great across the board. The production value in terms of actual sound, I was quite impressed by. Voice acting, though, is another thing entirely, and I wasn't really sold on this aspect of the game. The main character's voice I found to be a bit annoying and popped up way too often, especially underwater. As soon as your oxygen goes down to about halfway, he'll say that he needs oxygen, and while that's a nice reminder for the player, I found that it just was too frequent and really got old, especially in conjunction with the parrot character that comes with you throughout the duration of the game. The parrot speaks so much, and it got really annoying really fast. After the first 10 minutes, I wanted him to shut up, and luckily I think there is an option to do just that, but I unfortunately did not discover this until after my playtime was done. So if you're going into this game, adjust that if you feel like it's going to be annoying. Overall, Pirates VR Jolly Roger is a mixed bag for me. There's some things that show incredible potential and are really great about this game, and then some things that didn't quite land, including some of the climbing and traversal. Some of the combat wasn't too impactful, and the voice acting and writing just wasn't for me. But some things, like some of the visual style, HDR, OLED implementation, and haptic use was fantastic, and I genuinely did enjoy exploring all the locations the game had to offer, as they were all quite well crafted in terms of a level design perspective. Anyway, have you tried Pirates VR yet? Please do let me know in the comments below, and thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.